People, what's the juiciest secret you know that nobody else does? My ex-sister-in-law, who is a deeply religious Christian with strong views against LGBTQ+ relationships, participated in more than one group project, if you catch my drift. I mean, she wasn't even fond of the age gap between my girlfriend and me. I'm 10 years older. I know about her group projects because she messed up her computer and asked me to fix it, most importantly to get all her photos back. I found many folders with different dates of her partakes in those projects. It was always the same group of people, a total of 4 women around her age, in their 20s, a woman likely in her late 40s, and 4 men who were all over 60. She had pictures of everything they did, and they have done everything you can imagine or have only seen in corn. The photos kept me busy for a very long time. If only my ex-girlfriend knew why I wasn't in the mood to do it with her during that time. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. A female friend and I went to a house party one night. She was interested in getting together with the owner of the house. We had never been there before, but it was a huge 3-story white house, which I jokingly called a real-world house. The party had been going on for hours by the time we arrived, and the crowd was pretty drunk, with around 80 people still there. We split up when we arrived. She went off to flirt with her guy, and I hung out with a few people I knew. After a while, I saw her and the guy heading upstairs to his room, and I was happy she was getting what she came for. About an hour later, I got a text from her. Something bad happened. I asked what happened, and she replied, I double-banged. I was confused, so I asked for an explanation. She told me she was in the upstairs bathroom and to come find her. When I met her there, she explained the situation. After hooking up with the guy she liked, she left his room and went to the bathroom. But when she came back, she got into bed with what she thought was the same guy, only it wasn't. Due to the house's layout, the guys looking similar, and her being drunk and in the dark, she ended up in the wrong room. She realized her mistake during round 2 when she noticed the guy's size was different. Unsure of what to do, she just kept going until it was over, then hurried back to the bathroom. The second guy was dubbed the mystery bang from that point on. I'm the only one who knows about it besides her. Story 3. A few years ago, my little sister was on a cooking reality show. She was really young at the time, but was an absolute baking prodigy. The challenge that week was to make some sort of dessert, like tiramisu or something. I'm not much of a cook, so I'm not sure, but I do know they had to make ice cream first. One of the contestants made his ice cream, put it in the freezer, and went back to his baking. My sister, needing space in the freezer for her dish, took his ice cream out and forgot to put it back in. When he saw it melted, he totally flipped out and ended up throwing out everything he had made up to that point. Nobody fessed up, and he was eliminated that week. The only ones who know what really happened are my sister, our mom, and me. Story 4. Back in the days, my friends and I hung out with this one kid that had a smoking hot mom. The kid's older sister was cute, too. The dad was cool, but he was huge and not someone you'd want to piss off. The mom was a doting wife, but she was kind of flirty with everyone. Not overtly, it was very subtle. She would get drunk occasionally, but when she did get drunk, it was always way too far. Even the daughter was like that. I hadn't seen my friend in like 10 years. I knew he'd sleep over at their new house once they moved in, but he told me he would actually sneak into the daughter's room every night and they'd bang. I kind of figured even back then that they were banging, but no one really cared about that. He told me a story about how he and the mother were drunk, and she had wanted more alcohol. Since he wasn't old enough to buy it, she had to go if she wanted it. So, he offered her his bicycle, and she made him resort her to the store. On the way to the store, she fell off the bike, and he rushed to help her, which brought them close to each other. They had a moment, and it led to a kiss, then it led to him pounding her in the desert, right then and there. So apparently while he would spend the night, because he actually liked the daughter, the mother would find him in the living room occasionally and put the moves on him. So he was clapping both the mother and the daughter, and no one but him knew about it. Also, I knew the guy really well, and that is definitely not something he'd lie about. Plus, the details he gave me about how it all went down was totally in the realm of possible, since I knew all parties involved. That lucky jerk. Story 5. One of my female colleagues has had her private photos shared on one of those revenge porn sites. I'm not sure if she knows about it, or how long they've been up, but it's unmistakably her, since the photos and videos show her face. To make matters worse, whoever uploaded them also included her full name. I'm not sure if it's still considered a secret since it's technically public, now that it's online, but honestly, the only thing I feel I can do is pretend I never saw it. Story 6. I had a year-long semi-relationship with an NFL player. We were never officially boyfriend and girlfriend, but we went on dates, hooked up several times, and did the things you'd expect in a normal relationship. Everything was always on his terms, and he explained that he just wanted to keep his personal life out of the spotlight and that his schedule was erratic because of his career. I accepted those as valid reasons. One night, I saw a text from a girl he claimed was his ex-girlfriend. I didn't read it, but it seemed odd that they were still in contact. I confronted him, which led to a fight, and we broke up. A few weeks later, I found out that this ex-girlfriend was actually his fiancée, and they got married 2 months after we broke up. I had been his side chick the whole time without realizing it. Since then, he's had a rough time, and I'm fine accepting that as karma. What annoys me is that I'm constantly reminded of him whenever I listen to sports talk radio, watch a game, or hear people talk about him. Everyone sees him as one of the good guys in the league, and it would ruin his career if I ever revealed the truth. Story 7. One of my friends had a baby and gave it up for adoption without anyone knowing. The baby's father has no idea that he has a kid running around somewhere in this world. I can't tell anyone I know because I've been sworn to secrecy, but this is the craziest secret I know. It's probably going to get buried, but here it goes. I know a girl in my hometown who has lived with her male best friend for a long time. She's very overweight, not fat-shaming, it's actually relevant to the story, and he's a big-time playboy. Long blonde hair, good looks, and plays drums in multiple successful bands. I only know this secret because of a drunken confession she made to a few close friends, something that had been bothering her for a while. Turns out, she and her male roommate have been secretly hooking up for a long time. She's madly in love with him and wants their relationship to be real and public, but he's ashamed of her weight. He even gave her a specific number of pounds she would need to lose before he would date her openly. If she doesn't meet that goal, he's made it clear he'll only keep their relationship a secret. As if that weren't bad enough, here's the part that's really scandalous. This has been going on for a couple of years, and she ended up getting pregnant. She couldn't bring herself to get an abortion and didn't want to tell him, so she decided to keep the pregnancy hidden. Because of her size, she was able to do so without anyone noticing. She carried the baby to term, gave birth, and arranged for the baby to be adopted, all without anyone knowing. As far as I know, I'm one of only a very small group of people who know this, and I've never told anyone who wasn't there that night out of respect for her privacy. Story 8. My uncle slept with his brother's wife, my other uncle's wife, and got her pregnant. To this day, that side of the family keeps this a secret, and my cousin has no idea that his real father is actually his uncle. He's in his 30s now. I haven't had any contact with that side of the family since I was young. Story 9. A friend of mine has a long-term partner. When her partner went away on holiday, she met up with his best friend, and they ended up sleeping together. She then later found out she had contracted chlamydia from the best friend. Unfortunately, she found this out after her partner had come back from holiday and had already slept with him a few times. She didn't tell him, but instead started spiking his drinks with chlamydia medication. It dissolves in water. She did this for a week until her test results came back negative. She got away with it, and he never found out. I honestly feel a bit bad for him. Story 10. Friend got the clap from a hooker and blamed it on his wife for using a public toilet when she contracted it from him and got tested. I know some disturbing details about the guy who introduced my wife and me, which makes this even more twisted. This friend of mine met a woman on Craigslist and, in a strange turn of events, ended up hooking up. He then contracted an STI, which he passed on to his wife. When she noticed the symptoms, she went to the doctor, and upon receiving the test results, she completely lost it. But through some bizarre manipulation, he convinced her that she had caught it from a filthy toilet at a concert, and somehow, that she had given it to him. He then used this as an excuse to go on a guy's trip to Vegas, nearly causing a divorce in the process. Friend got the clap from a hooker and blamed it on his wife for using a public toilet when she contracted it from him and got tested. Story 11. I was with a girl for over 10 years, and we had a wonderful son together. We were a happy family for the most part. When our son turned 8, things took a turn, and we ended up splitting up. It was a messy breakup, and my son was devastated by the fact that his mom wasn't living with us anymore. We were separated for about a year, during which she briefly dated a guy who turned out to be a loser. Despite our separation, we had to keep in touch because of our son. He would visit her sometimes, and then one day, she dropped a bomb on me. I'm pregnant. She had gotten pregnant by this guy, and I was absolutely furious. I always thought we might get back together, but this news completely shocked me, and I wanted nothing to do with her. About a month after she found out, the guy she was seeing hit her and kicked her out of his car, leaving her stranded at a movie theater, even though she was pregnant. She reached out to me, and I knew things weren't going well for her. Despite my anger and disappointment, I helped her out, picking her up because there was a baby on the way. I thought about getting back together with her, but I was worried about what people, especially my parents, would think. If I told them, hey, I'm getting back with my ex, who's now pregnant by some guy she dated and was left out in the cold, they'd think I was crazy. But my son was thrilled. He wanted his mom back. I couldn't just turn her away, so we slowly started to get back together, keeping it a secret from my parents through the whole pregnancy and even for a few months after the baby was born. But of course my mom, who's on Facebook, started to ask questions, noticing how loud my parents' house was and wondering if my ex had another baby. I kept changing the subject, but my girlfriend kept pressuring me to tell them. Eventually, I told my parents that yes, we had gotten back together, and yes, she had a baby. My mom, who loves babies, was happy about it, but my dad, being more serious, was less enthusiastic. What I didn't tell them, though, was that the baby wasn't mine. I'm Hispanic, and the guy who got her pregnant was also Hispanic, so the baby had the same skin tone as me, which made it easy to keep that secret. My mom was happy, but asked why I didn't tell them sooner. I explained that I thought they would be upset about us splitting up and getting back together while having another baby. At first, I didn't think I could accept the baby as my own. I had so much anger about the situation, but when the baby was born, he reminded me so much of my son, and my son was thrilled to have a little brother. All my anger faded away, and I fell in love with him. I realized it wasn't the baby's fault, and he deserved the same love my biological son had. Now, even though the baby isn't mine by blood, I love him just as much as my own son. I helped my ex, now my girlfriend, with the baby, and he's such a sweet, well-behaved, funny little 1-year-old. Looking back, I wonder why I stressed so much about it. Now we're a family again, just with a new member, and all my parents know is that the baby is mine. Story 12. There's this actor who's semi-famous. He's had regular roles on TV shows, and he's married to an actress who's more well-known than he is. He did an interview recently where he was talking about how excited he is to have his first child, going on about it like it was this huge new chapter for him. The thing is, I know for a fact he has a daughter from when he was younger. He didn't stay with the mother, but they've kept in touch over the years. I actually dated his daughter, so I know this firsthand. She has his last name, though she doesn't really use it. It just seems really weird and kind of crappy to be talking about your first child like that when your daughter, who is reading the interview, is out there. It's also odd because she's never hidden the fact that she's his daughter, so it's strange that it's not more public knowledge. I guess maybe he's just not famous enough for people to dig into his past, including things like illegitimate children. Story 13. I know a guy who dated a lot of girls. His family is rich and pretty well connected in my community. A while ago, he was arrested by the FBI, and on his PC, they found thousands of gay kitty corn pictures and videos. His family paid a lot of money to local news so that they don't put the news of his arrest. I followed his court case for a bit, then suddenly his case just disappeared, as in, I can't find it anymore in court records. No idea what that means. This guy, though, is still around, still in school, living a normal life as if nothing happened. I know this because at the time I was dating someone from his family. What I remember the most was the family's reaction when it happened. They were more shocked by the gay part instead of the kitty corn or his future. Story 14. 2 weeks before my daughter's wedding, I discovered that my husband had been having an affair for over 5 years. He had a heart attack while out of town on business. Turns out the stranger, who saved his life by calling 911, was his mistress/girlfriend/or. After the heart attack, he told me he was impotent and couldn't take meds for it because of the damage to his heart. I believed him. When you aren't a liar, you believe what you're told. We'd been married for 20-plus years, so I accepted that we would be companions instead of lovers, in sickness and in health. When I found out about his affair, I confronted him. After trying to tell more lies, he finally confessed. So many things fell into place. The unexplained absences, the phone calls and text messages that he immediately deleted. Looking back, I realized I was an oblivious idiot. We agreed to stay together until after the holidays for the sake of our kids and grandkids. 2 months later, he had a massive stroke. Now I'm caring for a paralyzed man with brain damage. He cries and begs me not to leave him or tell our children about the affair. I won't. Story 15. I found my married friend's dad on Craigslist looking for a gay hookup. I'm a younger guy in college, and I'm bisexual. One day, while browsing Craigslist, yeah, I know it's sketchy, but it happens, I posted an ad looking for a hookup. Someone responded, and when they sent me a picture, it was a little blurry, but I was pretty sure it was my friend's dad. So I replied with just his name. "Is this you?" Turns out it was him. He started asking who I was, and then got really nervous, even offering me money to keep it a secret. At that point, I stopped replying, feeling really uncomfortable and nervous about the situation. Despite him being married, successful, and obviously either bisexual or gay, I just couldn't bring myself to tell his wife. It bothered me for a while, but I ended up keeping it to myself. He doesn't know I know, but it's super awkward whenever I'm around him now. One odd thing I learned from this experience is that a son tends to inherit the looks and size of his dad's. Well, you get the idea. So yeah, that's a weird takeaway. Story 16. Bro cheated on his wife with Brie Olson, and now he might have HIV. A few years ago, my good friend, who was married, and I, along with my girlfriend, went to a club. That night, the feature dancer was none other than Brie Olson, just after Charlie Sheen's infamous goddess phase. I suppose she needed to make some money after that whole chapter ended. After a pretty entertaining show, she started offering private dances for about $150. My buddy, despite being married, decided to take her up on the offer. My girlfriend bet me that Brie would end up giving him a blowy back there. I accepted the bet, figuring there's no way Brie Olson, a famous and rich porn star, would be going around doing that for just $100. So my girlfriend heads to the bathroom, and my buddy casually sits down next to me and says, "So, I just banged Brie Olson." I nearly spit my beer out and immediately asked him to explain the details, which he did. Afterward, we both agreed that we'd never, ever tell anyone about it. Of course, when my girlfriend returned, I told her that I'd won the bet and said he had gotten a blowy. So at least we both got laid that night. Now, I'm hearing that Charlie Sheen has been living with HIV for a while, and I'm thinking of giving him a shout-out, since he's not exactly into keeping up with celebrity gossip. Story 17. After our divorce, my ex-husband left behind a mess of junk. Among the pile, I found several waterproof field journals, so one day, I decided to use one to jot down a grocery list. While I was thinking of what I needed, I started skimming through the journal. It had old notes about guns and army stuff, but further in, I found some rough drafts of letters he had written to family and friends while deployed. Then, I came across a letter addressed to his cousin. It was filled with explicit things he wanted to do to her. They were very close, texting each other until 3 a.m. most nights, but I never thought anything of it. After all, they're family. But now I'm left wondering about the other female cousins he'd spoil and text until late at night. It gets worse. He cheated on his current wife and even tried to kiss me while she was pregnant with his child. What a creep. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he had actually slept with his cousin. I could easily ruin his life with that one letter, even if he never went through with it. Story 18. Somewhere out there, a mom found a picture of her younger son playing with his joystick, taped to her older son's TV, and she is taking that secret to the grave. My friend used to run a cash-only companion service, and eventually became really close with one of the women he worked with. Over time, they started dating, and she quit the service job. They got married, and yesterday they had their first baby. Only his brother and I know the full story, and it'll stay that way. For fun, here's a story about these two brothers. These brothers were only a year apart, so they grew up as best friends, always getting into trouble together. They spent their time skateboarding, causing mischief, and filming all their pranks, think jackass-type stuff. Nothing major, but it was all fun back then. Let's call my friend the one who ran the service Farquhar. One day, Farquhar snuck into the bathroom while his brother John was in the shower. John had no idea what was coming and didn't realize anything was off until firecrackers went off behind the shower curtain. Farquhar's hand appeared above the curtain, holding a disposable camera, snapping pictures. After the firecrackers went off, Farquhar ran off, and John was pissed, but that was supposed to be the end of it. Months later, Farquhar went to get the photos developed and was reviewing them when he came across one he'd almost forgotten about, the one from the shower. Instead of showing the firecrackers, the photo was of John mid-session, furiously playing with his joystick, with a wild look in his eyes. Farquhar swore it was one of the best photos he'd ever taken. Not sure what to do with such a compromising picture, Farquhar decided the safest place for it was under his TV set, taped inside an envelope. This was in the late 90s, so we're talking about a big, bulky TV, not a flat screen. Over time, Farquhar forgot about it, and it stayed hidden, out of sight, out of mind. It wasn't until much later in life that he came home from school one day to find his entire room had been cleaned. The shelves were dusted, everything was neat and tidy. As he looked around, he noticed the nightstand with the TV on it had also been cleaned. That's when it hit him. The hiding spot had been discovered. In a panic, he flipped over the TV, desperate to check underneath. Sure enough, someone had dusted there too, and his envelope was gone. Farquhar's family didn't have a maid. Every few months, Farquhar's mom would clean his and John's room to keep it looking presentable. She'd never mentioned anything about what she found under the TV, and in over 16 years, neither Farquhar nor John ever heard a word about it. When Farquhar finally asked his dad about it, all he did was laugh, hard, for a long time. Story 19. One of my close friends is disliked by everyone else in our group, and she has no idea. They constantly talk behind her back, calling her a liar. They even think she lied about having cancer, despite the fact that she has a scar from surgery and pictures of her in the hospital. They also believe she lied about her job as a professor because they couldn't find her name in the school's registry, despite the fact that they Googled the wrong school. One of the girls recently got married, and the liar was in the wedding party. Why would you invite someone you believe is a pathological liar to be in your wedding? A week before the wedding, my friend's appendix burst, and she had to be rushed to the hospital, so she couldn't attend. The group still claims she lied about it and didn't want to go because she forgot to buy her dress. For her birthday, her parents, who aren't rich, spent hundreds of dollars on a hotel room in NYC and tickets for us to attend a football game. I couldn't go due to health reasons, but I texted her the day after the game to ask how it went, and she said no one showed up. It breaks my heart. She's a wonderful person, and she has no idea why everyone has been treating her so terribly, especially since she missed the wedding. I'm torn between telling her the truth about what everyone has been saying or staying out of it. It's been going on for 6 years, and they've been calling her a liar the whole time. I'm the only one who believes her and doesn't think she's lying. She's been friends with some of these girls for 15 years. We're all in our late 20s/early 30s, and this feels like high school drama. Story 20. I had a secret relationship with my best friend's neighbor, who was much older than me, and it began when I was 17. He would sneak out of his house when I was spending the night at my friend's, pretending to be too drunk to go home and crashing at their house. We talked every day, and eventually, when I turned 18, we slept together. They never found out, and I've kept it that way because they consider him like a brother, and the entire family sees him in that light. I know revealing this would destroy them. They're very judgmental about anything that doesn't fit within their worldview. Besides, I've kept this secret for almost 10 years, and I just don't think I could bring myself to tell them now. We don't see each other anymore, although he has tried to reconnect with me and even suggested we get together when he's had problems with his girlfriends, especially when I'm single. Story 21. Family member in politics. Just a few juicy secrets. Typically, federal prosecutors are way more corrupt than the politicians they indict. Usually, when a politician is convicted of corruption, they are actually innocent. But prosecutors and attorney generals make careers out of taking down politicians. Most people don't know that side to the story. It's extremely easy for federal prosecutors to convict whomever they want. Their power is basically unchecked because everyone is afraid of becoming their next target. Innocence does not matter to them. Special interest controls politicians in a straightforward way. Example, NRA or AIPAC will approach a politician running for Congress and will tell them, "We will donate $1.5 million to your campaign, but you have to vote for X, Y, and Z. If you don't accept, we're going to make the same offer to one of your opponents, and you will lose. The politician can't win without the money, so they reluctantly take it. If that politician believes in immigration reform, they will follow their lobbyist's agenda, just so they have that tiny bit of freedom to push that immigration reform. Most people know lobbyists are deep into politics, but don't know the nature of the transaction, as stated above. Obama has no kitchen cabinet. He's extremely lonely in terms of having people in politics that he can unconditionally trust, whereas almost every other president has had a trusted group of advisors. This makes his job a lot tougher and deserves him more respect and admiration. Most of our foreign policy blunders in the last 60 years occurred due to corruption somewhere between the truth on the ground and the intelligence provided to the president. There are a lot of middlemen between those two steps, and that's where someone decides to, for instance, say that Iraq has WMDs, or that Vietnam attacked a U.S. warship. Bush was a decent guy who truly meant well. And I have so much more. It's kind of a burden. Story 22. My friend Jess has been in a relationship with her boyfriend for almost 5 years. He's not a great person. He's lazy, entitled, and relies on his wealthy parents who constantly take him on vacations and give him money for doing nothing. Jess has always been head over heels for him, but since she's gained some weight, he's become increasingly cruel. He goes to parties without inviting her, dines out with his family while leaving her at home, and lets his friends, who are into drugs, crash on their couch. Well, her couch, since she's the main breadwinner. Early in their relationship, I heard from another friend, Becky, that Jess's boyfriend and Becky had hooked up at a party. Jess had no idea, and I wrestled with whether or not to tell her. It was tough because Becky confided in me, and I didn't want to betray her trust. Plus, I knew Jess would demand to know who told me. She's always been so in love with him, and whenever she talks about how amazing he is, I can't help but cringe. I think deep down she knows what kind of guy he really is, but it's like wishful thinking at this point. I've tried to talk to her about the relationship, but she brushes it off every time. She said things like, "I'd trust boyfriend with my life. He'd never cheat on me." And it just makes me feel bad for her. She's so clueless. Update. About 30 minutes ago, I tried talking to Jess, and while I didn't reveal everything, she did admit she suspects her boyfriend might be cheating. She's heard some rumors while she's been away. I'm hoping she'll finally break up with him. Their relationship has been rocky for a while now. Story 23. Around 25 years ago, two of my friends, Rob and Ariel, started dating, and it eventually became serious. One night at a party, both of them got pretty drunk, and in his state, Rob confided in me that Ariel was into certain likings and had been involved with his family's 2 huskies. The next day, they seemed to have no memory of the conversation, so I chose to pretend it never happened. A year or 2 later, Rob and Ariel moved in together, and a few months after that, they adopted 2 male huskies. About a year later, they got married. Fast forward to around 10 years ago, their marriage hit a rough patch, and they divorced. A year after that, Rob got sick and passed away. Ariel, along with the dogs, moved to a new place, and I lost touch with her. About 5 years ago, I found out that Ariel had remarried, this time to a man who owns and runs an animal shelter. Story 24. A few years ago, I stopped by the office on New Year's Day to grab something I had forgotten. To my surprise, our quiet and unassuming accountant was there too, except he was wearing a dress, makeup, and some truly fabulous sparkly nail polish. Since it was New Year's Day, he could have easily laughed it off with something like, "Wow, what a wild party last night." But instead, he tried to hide under his desk, and the moment passed. I never mentioned it to anyone, but I couldn't help noticing that my expense claims always seemed to get processed just a little faster than everyone else's. Story 25. 8 of us girls had a fun weekend in London. One of them had a fling while we were there, and 9 months later, she had a baby. That baby is now 10 years old and looks just like the guy from London. As far as I know, neither her husband nor the Londoner has any idea. Every time she posts a picture of the kid on Facebook, I can't help but think about it. Story 26. I saw my boss making out with a woman at a bar. Definitely not his wife. At one point, we made eye contact, and I gave him a half smile. He immediately pushed the woman off him, which was honestly pretty hilarious to watch. They left shortly after. Edit. To address the general response. No, I'm not going to blackmail him because that's very illegal, and I'd rather not risk my career over it. I have, however, taken a few sick days and charged them as regular time, which he approved. I'll have a little fun with the situation but won't abuse it. Also, I don't plan to tell his wife. I know that's not what some people want to hear, but I have bills to pay, a dog to feed, and a job I need to keep. Plus, I don't know her personally, just in passing, and there's no way to predict how she'd react. She might not even believe me and could end up telling him what I said. Story 27. Until I was 12, I believed the man who raised me was my father. Then I found out the truth. My mom had an affair with a married man, got pregnant with me, and later married someone else who assumed I was his. My biological father has always known about me, but his entire family has no idea. I have a half-brother and half-sister from him who are now adults, completely unaware that I exist. He's wealthy, involved in politics, and I have no clue if his wife knows. If the truth ever came out, it would probably cause massive fallout. It's wild to think that I'm technically part of their family, yet they have no idea. Story 28. My grandpa passed away recently, and my grandma never really handled the finances. Probably one of those old-fashioned dynamics where the man took care of the money. He was a doctor, always careful with saving and investing, so they lived comfortably. Now that she has to manage everything, she finally took a look at their finances. Turns out, my grandpa was really good at saving and investing. His portfolio is worth nearly $7 million. No one had any idea. Story 29. One of my close friends, X, confided in me that she's somewhat bi and has always wanted to use a strap-on with a girl. She also admitted that being around another one of our good friends, Y, can be a little awkward, because Y is the person she'd want to do it with. But, of course, I can never tell anyone. Meanwhile, Y once told me that even though she considers herself straight, she enjoys watching lesbian porn and has always wanted another girl to use a strap-on on her. And, get this, she specifically fantasizes about X being the one to do it. But she made me swear not to tell anyone, especially X. She even brought it up with her boyfriend, but he was completely against the idea. Now I'm wondering, if she ever breaks up with him, should I tell them they both want the same thing? Or should I just keep this wild coincidence to myself? Story 30. My friend has no idea who the father of her baby is because she was sleeping with two guys at the same time. She's currently living with one of them, who fully believes he's the dad, but she isn't sure. To make things even messier, she's considering getting back with her ex, a third guy who is definitely not the baby's father. Technically, he's still her husband since they never officially filed for divorce. Now here's where my personal theory comes in, pure speculation, but still. She and her husband had been trying to have kids for years with no success. Yet, she got pregnant really fast after dating other guys. Part of me wonders if this was all part of a long-term plan between them. Story 31. My cousin cheated on his first wife at groupie session. Then, he started an affair with a married coworker. Eventually, they both divorced their spouses and ended up marrying each other. Despite his first wife being an amazing person and the mother of his two kids, his entire family cut her off like she never existed. Meanwhile, they fully embraced his new wife. My family sucks. Story 32. Before I got into a relationship, I was secretly hooking up with my friend's ex, repeatedly. He was actually my friend too, and honestly, he was always a better friend to me than she ever was. I know it would probably crush her if she found out, but she wasn't exactly a great friend to me. When I once mentioned that I used to have a crush on him, her response was, "Huh, I'd be kind of upset, but he's not and never will be into you, so I'm not worried." I told her that was a really mean thing to say. She just shrugged and said, "Yeah, but it's true." Story 33. The former vice president of Nigeria accepted a bribe through a planned fertilizer factory in Bayelsa State. The former minister of finance, Olusegun Agana, did the same, and on top of that, he was a sloppy drunk who would agree to just about anything as long as he was completely wasted in London. Eventually, he was shuffled into a less significant role, like Minister of Labor or Infrastructure, some made-up position to keep him out of the way. Frank Nweke, the former Minister of Information, essentially propaganda, held all internal meetings in his Mayfair apartment, and Olusegun Obasanjo was loosely connected to the whole operation. 5 companies, including Ude and Sapum, were bidding on the project. Each was told they would secure the gas allocation from Dr. Ike of the parastatal, an amount equal to Nigeria's entire natural gas production, plus an additional 5 to 10% of planned expansion, if they were willing to grease the wheels. Every company paid up just before the election, which relied on dirty money to fund the military's suppression of the North and secure a PDP victory. The result was a brutal conflict, with an estimated 2,000 casualties, many of whom were killed in horrific ways, including being burned alive with tires around their necks. Meanwhile, we had all genuinely believed we were working on a project that could provide fertilizer for Nigeria and supply 25% of Africa's needs. Story 34. I used to work at a Kinko's where the IT guy was sleeping with the assistant manager. They had a very on and off relationship. During one of their off phases, the IT guy confided in me that the manager had a child when she was around 13, and her parents ended up taking custody. Whenever she mentioned something like, "I have to babysit my sister this weekend," she was actually talking about her daughter. One time, while we were on the shop floor, the manager mentioned her sister, and the IT guy turned to face me and made air quotes behind her back. I think we were all in our early 20s at the time, but for some reason, I found the whole thing kind of hysterical. Story 35. My friend's wife bought him a PS4 and Battlefront for Christmas after swearing she'd never support his gaming. First time I see him after Christmas, I'm just going to walk up and say, "You're welcome." But real story time. The summer after I graduated high school, my group of friends and I went camping at a campground the one guy's family has a permanent trailer at. We generally do this every year. This year was different in that the girls actually came up with us for the first time, and since we were all 18, no parents. There was a creek nearby that was really popular to tube down, and we would do it almost every day. Later in the week, Thursday I think, the girls decided they were not going to join us for tubing. We start out and just have a fun time. Eventually, a storm starts brewing on the horizon, and the speed of the water picks up a little. We keep our eyes on it, but don't worry too much. Shortly after, a cut military-looking type man on the side of the creek with the road comes up to the edge and asks us if we've seen his daughter and her friend anywhere. He describes them, and we all say no, but we'll keep an eye out for them, and he continues up the river. Maybe 5 minutes later, we hear laughing and thrashing on the opposite bank in the brush. I think I hear what sounds like muffled screams. Being the curious bloke I am, I convince the rest of the guys to check it out. We land and quietly walk up to the sounds. Sure enough, the two girls that were being searched for were here being essayed by two drunk older guys and a third guy filming. We immediately rush in to stop them and pull them off. My friend wrestled, and I had numerous years of martial arts training, so they stopped fighting and ran pretty quickly. My one friend managed to grab the camera before they ran. We escorted the sobbing girls back to her father in the camp, handed him the camera without saying anything, and left. They found two of the rapists' bodies beaten and hanged out in the woods about a mile from camp. The guys all know who it was, and the girls never heard the story. Story 36. There's an open secret that hasn't gotten nearly enough attention from the media. A significant number of Republicans and Republican organizations have accepted money from the Moonies, a controversial church/cult with strong ties to North Korea. The Moonies have even been involved in selling weapons to North Korea. Joe Biden's son was also linked to questionable business dealings with one of Reverend Moon's, the late cult leader, who passed away 2 years ago, sons-in-law. This son-in-law was married to Tatiana, the leader of the American branch of the church. Tatiana, the daughter of Reverend Moon, is now divorced because she had an affair with the hot band dad from her New York-based megachurch and had a secret child with him. The birth certificate was leaked online. Her ex-husband was also prosecuted for dubious financial dealings involving mysterious funds. Now back to the money. Millions in undisclosed funds have supported the church, Joe Biden's son, and various Republican politicians. However, it's well known that the church faced prosecution in Japan for defrauding widows of their fortunes and pensions. Most members are required to tithe at least 10%, and many lived in poverty, sometimes in vans, during the 70s and 80s. My dad lived that way for 7 years, giving all their earnings to the church. 5 or more people often shared these vans. Mysterious money has kept these operations running. Story 37. We had a doctor working with us for a charity who was incredibly nice and friendly, especially with kids. They absolutely adored him. He was unbelievably patient. There was this one time when a patient threw feces at him, and he dodged it, only to end up lying in the patient's urine. And you know what? He just laughed it off, even as he quietly let a nurse clean him up. I've never seen a doctor do that before. He never got angry, no matter what. Even when patients did something ridiculous, he he never lost his temper. That is, until one particular patient came in. She had been stabbed by her husband. Another doctor had tried to close the wound, but the family hadn't bothered to bring her in until she was nearly dying. At first, they lied to us about the situation, but when he saw the wound, he simply said in this calm, chilling voice, "Don't lie." The tone of his voice was terrifying. There was no humor in it. It was like the fear you feel as a kid when you've done something wrong, even if no one has yelled. You know you've messed up, and it's that unspoken, quiet fear. At that moment, one of the family members pulled a coconut knife and tried to swing it at him. I don't even think I saw him move, but before I knew it, he'd snatched the knife out of the guy's hand, mid-swing, without trying to protect his own face. He scrubbed up and repaired a small tear in her intestine, then called the police and testified. Despite the threats from the family, he stood his ground. Afterward, he even offered the woman a job once she recovered, to help her become independent from her family. She eventually divorced her husband and went to live with her family, and he never raised his voice once. I've seen another side of him, though. He always changes in private, away from the rest of us. He's covered in scars and has a tattoo in Latin, in arduous fiddle, or something like that. I've never met a doctor with so many scars. He speaks Arabic, too. I've seen him sit down with Muslim patients and help them read the Quran. Despite having loads of work to do, he relaxes by engaging with his patients. He's not the smartest doctor in terms of medical knowledge, but his kindness makes him stand out. People think he's harmless and soft-spoken, and they often walk all over him or laugh when he flinches at the sound of fireworks or balloons popping. But I don't think they realize that he lets them get away with it because he just doesn't want any fuss. This is a man who doesn't even blink when someone tries to swing a knife at him. Story 38. A family member has a high-profile job in the community, and I've always wondered how she landed it. She acts as though she's above the rest of the family, like she's incredibly important. Recently, I was at a friend's house and saw some paperwork for an organization that both my friend and this family member were involved in. Her bio was included, listing multiple degrees from a prestigious university, along with many accomplishments and interests. The thing is, she never attended that university. In fact, the one university she did attend, she only completed one semester at. The accomplishments she listed are completely fabricated. She claimed to have been an instructor in a recreational sport she only dabbled in during the 80s. It's all a lie. I don't want to ruin her life, but it's hard to keep quiet when I know the truth. Story 39. A few years ago, a very prominent U.S. politician, someone who's widely recognized, essentially refused to hire a qualified candidate simply because of her race. If this ever got out, it would have completely destroyed their career. The woman in question easily passed all interviews and was highly qualified for the role, but the politician told her, "I'm sorry, you seem nice, but our clients wouldn't feel comfortable with you." Somehow, the rumor leaked to the New York Times, and they managed to track down the woman who had been turned down, my mom's best friend. The NYT also found a former employee at the company who could corroborate the story. All that was needed was for the woman to confirm the details in an interview, and the story would be front-page news. My mom's best friend met with my mom for coffee to discuss what to do. In the end, she decided it wasn't worth putting her family in the spotlight, especially since the timing would have led to a media frenzy. I privately think my mom might have helped convince her, as she was very supportive when I argued against it. I'm sure this story will eventually be buried, but it's still a shame. It really changed my view of U.S. politics and made me deeply cynical of both parties, for reasons I won't get into here. Story 40. I officiated my good friend's wedding, but I was the only one who knew it was a sham. They had been going through some serious problems and decided they wanted to call it off, but they didn't want to cancel the wedding. They still wanted to bring the family together and avoid losing money on deposits. I think he also hoped that going through with it might help them reconnect. So, I performed the ceremony, but I never signed any legal papers. The marriage was never official, and I don't think they ever told anyone that their later divorce was really just a regular breakup. It was really strange to watch all the speeches from the brothers and best friends, who had no idea what was really going on. Story 41. A friend essayed another friend's sister. He got what was coming to him. A friend got really drunk one night and told me about how 3 years prior he had essayed a sister of another friend of ours, while she was blackout drunk at a party. Apparently, he was buzzed, but not too drunk to not know what he was doing. They had filed a report with the police and gotten a kit done, but there was no match in the system. After that party, we found out a month later that she was pregnant. She decided to keep the baby, and all of us, family and friends, have been supporting her in any way we can, except for the guy who got her pregnant. That really pissed me off, so I knocked him on his bum and called another friend to help. It took about half an hour to talk him down from doing something drastic to our former friend. While the guy was still out of it, I swabbed his mouth with a Q-tip, and we got a paternity test done. It took a month and a half to get the results, but when we did, it turned out to be a match. My friend and his parents took it to the police, and now our former friend is currently enjoying being essayed in prison. I just thought I should finish this off with what happened afterward. Story 42. My friend is an exchange student from China, and his parents are incredibly controlling. They want him to find a wife while he's here, and are even offering $50,000 to any girl who would marry him. The thing is, he's gay, not sure if his parents know about it. I found out when he asked my roommate in a panic if she knew anyone who would marry him, just so he could stay in the country. Story 43. My cousin found out that his wife had been cheating on him with people she met on Craigslist. When he went to his parents for advice and support, they guilt him into saving the marriage. It's worth mentioning that my uncle is a serial cheater himself, so I honestly don't know why my cousin turned to them for guidance. Now he and his wife have a child, but she regularly trashes him on Facebook. I'm not supposed to know about any of this, but I do. Story 44. At one point, this was a secret, but it's not much of one anymore. A friend of mine in high school had a best friend she met during her first year. Somehow, both of their parents met and realized they were married to the wrong people. They figured out that their true soulmates were actually each other's spouses. So, the moms swapped dads, and the dads swapped moms. They went from being best friends to stepsisters in what seemed like no time. I found out not long after, and something that crazy doesn't stay quiet for long in high school. Even the teachers were talking about it. Story 45. I had a great relationship with my father-in-law. He was a wonderful man, and we got along very well. One day, out of the blue, he decided to confide something in me. He told me it was something no one else knew and asked me to keep it a secret until after his death. He revealed that he was the result of an affair his mother had. Apparently, my wife's grandmother was quite promiscuous and had an affair on her husband, my wife's grandfather. As a result, she got pregnant and had my father-in-law. My wife's grandfather, who was an incredible man, raised my father-in-law as his own. He never knew he wasn't his biological child. His father treated him just like his biological son, who was born a few years later. A few months before her death, my father-in-law's mother finally told him the truth. He asked his father about it, and after some hesitation, his father confirmed it. My father-in-law asked why he never told him the truth, and his father said, "Because I loved you no matter what. You were an innocent child who deserved my love. You are my son, and I will always love you no matter what." My father-in-law never told anyone else this story because he didn't want people to think less of his mother. He didn't want to ruin her memory, especially since she wasn't a very nice person. He trusted me with that secret. My father-in-law passed away about 14 years ago. I've never told anyone the story, and I'm still unsure about when or how I will. Maybe when I'm older, I'll share it with one of my kids, especially since they never knew their great-grandmother, and it wouldn't affect their memories of her. But I'm hesitant about telling my wife. I don't know how it would change her perception of her grandparents. For now, I've kept my promise to remain silent until after my father-in-law's death. 14 years have passed, and I'm still unsure what to do. Story 46. I had a best friend who, sadly, ended up slipping into a coma due to a tumor and now suffers from conduction aphasia after surgery. Just 2 weeks before that happened, she came back to our hometown, where I still live. We had always had a bit of a crush on each other since freshman year of high school, but we ended up becoming much better friends as time went on. I became her absolute best friend, and we knew pretty much everything about each other. We even ended up hooking up the week she came back. It was amazing, and I truly think we could have been a great couple if she hadn't moved. We were really compatible in that way, which surprised me. She went back home, found out about the tumor, and told me that if she lost her memory, which she did, I should tell her boyfriend that he should move on. Now, her boyfriend still posts emotional things on her Facebook wall, and her parents seem okay with it. The thing is, her parents are super conservative Christians, and they never really liked me because I'm Native American and have long hair. She would lie to them to come spend time with me. Now, even though she lives just 20 minutes away, I never see her. I have this weird fear about it, especially since she doesn't even remember who I am anymore. I think it's best I stay away. Story 47. I live on a small tropical island, a former British colony, right on the harbor in the capital. My neighbor was an elderly, extremely wealthy Englishman who had made his fortune mining phosphates, something related to explosives during World War II. In his later years, he became frail, and only his gardener took care of him. His children never visited. They hated him. My mother used to send him soup with me, but he never learned my name, always calling me boy. One day, while going through the clutter in his house, I stumbled upon a black and white photo of him and a beautiful young woman, cozied up at a restaurant. There were several more pictures in a folder, laughing, talking, and clearly very comfortable with each other. She looked so familiar, so I asked him who she was, thinking it was his wife. "Boy," he said, "that's Liz." It hit me then. Her face was the one on our money at the time. He didn't offer any more details, but I've always suspected that he had a secret relationship with Queen Elizabeth. He passed away a couple of decades ago, but that mystery has stayed with me. Story 48. My mom has been in an on-and-off affair with my dad for 23 years, ever since I was born. He lives on the other side of the country with his own family. He's married with a son and a daughter, both much older than me, and they have children of their own. He's still happily married, and his wife and kids have no idea I exist. Recently, I've become friends with two of his granddaughters, who of course have no idea we're related, but I know. I'm now friends with them on Facebook, and I've seen pictures of my half-brother's profile and photos of my dad at family events, like weddings. It's all really strange. Story 49. I went to university with this girl who was the epitome of beauty, preppy, conservative, smart, popular, and the classic girl-next-door type. She was still with her high school sweetheart, and we became friends. At first, I didn't realize how messed up she really was. She'd been with her boyfriend for about 7 years, but she was a chronic cheater, a heavy drinker, and honestly, probably a sociopath. One night, while drunk, she bragged to me that she went on dates every week with different men, all while her boyfriend had no idea. She was seeing 2 or 3 men on the side. One night, after her birthday celebration, we took a cab together. While we were sitting in the back, she tried to kiss me. I'm straight. She confessed she was attracted to me, but I gently turned her down. She wasn't too happy about it, and later that night, she ended up hooking up with my boyfriend. That was the breaking point, so I went no contact. More bizarre things followed, and now, she's a well-respected lawyer in my town. Story 50. I discovered that I have a brother and a sister from my father's side when I was 26. At that time, I came out to my father as gay, which had always been a big hurdle for me since he's very much a traditional military officer type. To my surprise, he was incredibly accepting, supportive, and loving. But, since we were being honest, he decided to confess something himself. It turns out that shortly after, or even during, his divorce from my mother, he started a family with another woman. That wasn't the real issue, though. People move on. The painful truth was that my mother had made him promise never to tell me about these siblings. She threatened that if he did, he'd never see me again, essentially using me as a pawn in their relationship. I've since met my siblings, and we get along really well. We share the same values and interests that my father instilled in me, and they're only about 7 years younger than I am. What hurts the most is that growing up as an only child, I always wanted a sibling, someone to share things with, someone to argue with. My mother, however, was always distant and never showed much interest in me. I spent most of my childhood alone in my room, and she kept my siblings from me all that time, even though I had exactly what I had always wanted. Now, I know everything, and she's blissfully unaware that I've known the truth for years. Maybe it's vindictive, but I'm planning to marry my partner of 6 years soon, and I intend to invite everyone from the close family, just so I can see the realization on her face when she finally understands what I know. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.